Hello. So this video is a description of the Sonnet assignment, primarily the Sonnet written work assignment. So the first thing you need to do is pick a sonnet. There's a document called 6 Sonnets to Select, or sometimes I tweak it, sometimes I add more, sometimes I take less, so whatever. There is some document on Moodle that says something about sonnets and selecting, or pick one of these sonnets or whatever. Should be pretty obvious. So you pick one, and what this document has is the sonnet itself, and then a modern language version of it. This is not a line by line, hey, this is exactly what this line says or this line says. It is possible that you could piece that together from this, but what I recommend is that you read the modern language version of all of these, and then you pick one that speaks to you somehow. You're going to be spending a lot of time with it in class. So pick one. Let me just take a moment to say that, I am not one of these people that thinks that Shakespeare hung the moon. I know some of you may be intimidated by the idea of working with Shakespearean language, and sonnets particularly, perhaps. A sonnet is not a cutting or a monologue from a play. It is a standalone poem. Shakespeare wrote 100 and some odd numbers of sonnets. I use them in Acting 1 because they are an excellent way to do vocal work. The language is challenging, and so you have to really articulate very well. Also, they contain very potent images, which really help when you're performing a monologue. We're going to be treating the sonnets as if the same way that we would be treating a monologue. And as we look at the written work assignment, we'll see how it differs a little bit, but basically everything we're doing for a sonnet is the same thing you would do for a monologue. I get it. Shakespeare might not be your thing. I don't worship Shakespeare either, like many theater people do, but sonnets are really good tools for actors. And you never know, one day you might be in an audition situation where you're going to need to say some memorized Shakespearean language, and you'll have this one memorized and ready to go. Just to be clear, in class we will be performing Shakespeare's words, not the modern language words. So we will work on these using contemporary language a lot of the times, but in performance you will be memorizing and acting and performing Shakespeare's words, not the modern language words, because it's a good way to practice playing subtext, because what you mean is always far more important than what you say. So when you're saying all this flowery language, it's helpful to endow it with what the heck do you really mean. So look at the sonnet written work guidelines, the document that's called Sonnet Written Work. Imagine that. For all of your performance material, you are going to research and analyze the play, but as I just said, the sonnets don't come from plays, so we're going to look at how we're going to deal with that uniquely for the sonnets. First thing you need to do is do the research. So all you're going to do is look up a few sources that tell you different information about your sonnets. This is not hard to find for sonnets. You can find umpteen billion different websites that talk about sonnets, and each one of them are going to say something different. Some of them might have a specific line by line, this is exactly what this line means. Some of them might just, go on for paragraphs about the imagery in the sonnet or what have you. And they're both valuable in different ways. So when you do your research, you'll get slightly different interpretations. So that's good. So look up your sonnet from 3 different websites. Finding the websites is actually part of the assignment. I've already helped you out a little bit. On the document, the modern translation at the bottom is from No Fear Shakespeare, so don't use that one. You've already gotten all you're going to get out of that one. There is a site that I do recommend, Shakespeare Online. It has a line-by-line modern version. It's very helpful. So now all you have to do is find two more. And what you're going to type up and turn in is going to look something like this. It's you're going to name the website and give me the name and the web address. I'm going to put that on there. So if it's called Know If You're Shakespeare, the website might be knowifyou'reshakespeare.com, but it might be called, Shakespeare Sonnets, and the web address is www.abcdefg. So what is the name of the site? That actually helps you get a little bit closer to understanding whether or not the website is reputable. So what's the name of the website? What date did you get the information off the website? And then just give me two really quick things. What was the information that you learned? What was it? Be very short. One sentence is just fine. There you go. And then how will what you learned affect your performance of the sonnet? This is obviously the most important part of doing the research. If the information you learned will not affect the way you perform your sonnet, then this should not be one of your sites. You need to find, once upon a time I had 4, but I'm just making you do, well, yeah, total. What did I say? I go back from term to term. Yeah, 3. You only need 3. So 3 sites that will contribute to your performance. How is what you learned going to affect your choices as an actor? If you find a website that gives you some really awesome information, but it's not information that you want to focus on in performing the sonnet, then go on to a next one. All of your sources need to have information that you are really going to use. Let me add, however, that just because a website says that that's what the sonnet's about, it doesn't mean that you have to perform that sonnet that way. What you're doing, research should never limit your artistic choices. They should only give you more artistic choices to draw from. And there are some artists that are actors or whatever, all kinds of artists that say, I don't do research, it gets in the way of my artistic process. Well, no, that just really means you're lazy. All the research you do is going to give you more choices. You are not bound to stick to anything you find. So if you find something that you don't find useful, great, get past it. There's plenty else that you can find about Shakespeare sonnets that will be useful. So just bear that in mind as you do the research. You are going to create the circumstances for the sonnet, and the research is only going to help inform you more about the sonnet. I do strongly recommend that you do the research first. It has often happened in Acting 1 that someone picked a sonnet and did the given circumstances and started acting and did all their work. And then they did the research and they realized, this sonnet really doesn't say anything close to what I thought it said. So obviously the most important thing for the sonnets is you figure out what the heck you're saying. So do that. And there you go. And then you will type that up and submit that. The second part of this assignment is you're going to create the given circumstances and your actions. Do this second. So one of the most important things that an actor needs to know how to do is read a play and get all the facts that the playwright has given you. Obviously, it's not news to anybody. The playwright doesn't lay out in specific detail exactly who your character is. You have to read the play and find out who the character is, find out from what other characters say about your character, from the things that you do. But you don't have that in a sonnet, so you're going to be acting like a playwright. You're going to create the given circumstances, and all you have to do is answer these 8 questions here. As we know, given circumstances is not a new term. You saw that from our early discussion. The given circumstances come from the play or director. In this case, they come from you. But your sonnet, you'll need to make up the given circumstances, but you still have to stick to the truth of the language. the given circumstances that you have to create need to make sense in the sonnet. If the sonnet is basically saying, I love you, please don't ever leave me, then your given circumstances should not be you're quitting your job and talking to your boss. Make sure that your given circumstances match the words that you're actually saying. And another beautiful thing about the sonnets is that they can be in many different scenarios. You could say each sonnet into 100 different people in 100 different situations. So you're going to create the situations. First thing, and you're going to type all these up. Please number them so I know which one you're doing. You can totally just like copy this form and type your stuff into this. Honestly, I would rather you didn't, because then I have to wade through, what are my words and what are your words. I would much rather you do it to look like the example that is below, which we'll look at in a second. So all you have to do is decide who are you talking to, and just tell me a little bit about the relationship. Don't just answer this to I'm talking to my partner, or I'm talking to my brother. No. Are you talking to your partner and you've had a rocky relationship? How long have you been together? Just briefly, this isn't for me, this is for you. This is giving yourself more specifics to play as an actor. Think of everything that you would know about a character if you were reading a play. So what are the relationships? And let me add here, I'm going to put this in here. Do not talk to yourself. Yes, it is totally possible that there are many plays written in all of dramatic literature in which a character is talking to themselves. And every single one of Shakespeare's sonnets, you could create a circumstance in which you're talking to yourself. You're trying to convince yourself to do something. That's great. For the purposes of this exercise, and I'm not going to explain it really any more than just, you got to trust me on this one. For the purposes of this exercise, it's better if you were talking to someone else. So don't pick a sonnet that you're basing your decision on, I can really see me telling myself this. You need to be imagining that you're talking to someone else. Now, this someone else that you're talking to can be a fictitious person. It can be someone in your life for real. A lot of people like to rehash old relationships. However, don't pick something that's really fresh. If you broke up with your girlfriend last week, don't pick a sonnet that you're still, talking to her, trying to get her back, or telling her to leave you alone. That's too close emotionally. So pick something that you can have some emotional distance with, yet something that still means something to you. It needs to be something important. Don't pick a situation that's just trivial or silly, and we'll find out why in just a second. But pick somebody that means something to you, that the situation you're creating is important. Pick somebody that you know. It's hard to create a situation that's really important if you're talking to someone that you don't really know, a stranger on the street, the checkout girl in the grocery store. Pick somebody that you have high context with. That's one way of looking at characters. Low context, somebody you don't really know, you don't share a history. High context, somebody that you know really well. Pick somebody that you have high context with. So, what do you want? This one, who you're talking to, that's not too hard. This one is deceptive. Who are you talking to, and what do you want? What is your goal? As you know, every time every character says anything, there's something that they want. For the purpose of your sonnet, you need to have a goal that your character will do something after you speak to them. You don't simply want to change their mind. You want to change their behavior. You want them to do something. So you're not just convincing somebody to fall in love with you. You're convincing them to embark on a relationship with you. You're convincing them, fill in the blank. What do you want them to do? Don't just think about changing their mind. Think about changing their actions. How will you know when you've gotten what you want? How do you know if somebody's in love with you? What do they do? Whatever. You want them to marry you. That's a pretty good sign. fill in the blank. This is really important, and this is the most common one that people do not grasp right away. Often in class, I will say, and I promise it will happen again, so what's your goal? I want them to forgive me. Well, how will you know that they've forgiven you? Think about what do you want them to do. Actually, forgiveness is kind of okay. That's something they can do. I want them to love me is not an action. Is not something that they're going to do. And what is your obstacle? The easiest way to think about this, why are they currently not doing what it is that you want them to do? Create that. You're not pledging your love to me forever because you don't trust me. You are whatever. You can fill in the blank with 100 different things. So think about what's getting in your way of getting what you want. Next one is, why is this important? This goal must be important. This is not ordering French fries at the drive-thru. This is doing something really important. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that will happen if I don't achieve my goal? Make it very, very important. Then you decide, what's your super objective for the entire sonnet? In a play, a character has a super objective, and that's easily understood as what do they want out of life. And then in each scene, the character has an objective that contributes to getting that super objective. For your whole sonnet, so to use the term super objective for a 1.5-minute monologue is not as accurate as it should be, but just to get used to using that language, super objective is the overall goal. So what do you want for the entire sonnet? What's your goal for this sonnet. This will overlap with what's your goal in number 2. But what we're looking for here is one phrase. So what we're looking at is a very carefully worded phrase. I want to blank blank in order to blank, like we talked about before. And then you're going to create that elevator phrase for the entire sonnet. I'm not going to go into exactly what an elevator phrase is right now. We'll talk about that more. Hopefully we've covered that by now. Remember that elevator phrase is that very short, quick, what's your point? It's the subtext. It's what you really mean behind the language. And we'll look at that when we look at the example. I want you to come up with one verb for each one of the quatrains. All your verbs should come from an actor's thesaurus, which I've uploaded. So just look for anything on Moodle that's labeled thesaurus. Actor's thesaurus. It contains verbs. The most important thing is that all the verbs are actually verbs. Frustrated is not a verb. Lonely is not a verb. What is your character doing? And all of these verbs are in service of getting what you want. You're doing something to achieve your goal, to get that super objective for the sonnet. And then you want a verb for each quatrain. Well, that's what I just said. A verb for each quatrain in the couplet. And then you want an elevator phrase for each quatrain in the couplet too. So we'll look at that. But before we do that, please bear in mind that you should not freak out about this assignment. I promise you, you have probably never done anything like this before. If you've never acted before, obviously, but even if you have acted, you might not have worked this way before. This is the way that actors do things. This is very common, coming up with goals, obstacles, and actions. So now we're just getting our feet wet. Don't worry about it being right. To be brutally honest, you are going to get full credit for this assignment as long as you do it. Most people don't get it right at first. Your job is to give it your best try and submit it by the due date. As we rehearse, you will tweak and redefine your actions and elevator phrases. That means that we're making progress. So that's fine. So don't be handicapped by this. One of the goals of this class is to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. So just give it up. You're probably not going to do this right. Failure is beautiful. All you have to do is show up. So give it a try and let's see what you come up with. You will not have any points docked because the person you came up with is not the best choice. You will not have any points docked because the first thing you bring to class is not an extremely important goal. We will talk about these in class and we will work on them together through discussion and make them better. So, here's the example that I've come up with. This example is from sonnet number 1, which you will not be picking because it's not on the list of those to pick, which is why I chose it as an example. So here's what I came up with for sonnet number 1. If you want to pause the video and read over this, let's see if I can't get the whole thing in. Read it, fast forward, and then read the end. It's about one person talking to another. The imagery is that, oh, what the heck, let's read it. From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die. But as the riper should by time decease, his tender air might bear his memory. That means it's natural for beautiful things to die, and we want people to basically have children. His tender air might bear his memory. We want beautiful people to have children. That's basically what it says. But thou contracted to thine own bright eyes, feedest thy lights flame with self-substantial fuel, making a famine where abundance lies, thyself thy foe to thy sweet self too cruel. Basically means contracted to thine own bright eyes, you're pretty selfish, you're focusing on your own looks, and ultimately you're hurting yourself. To thy sweet self too cruel. Thou that art now the world's fresh ornament, and only herald to the gaudy spring, within thine own bud buryest thy content, and tender troll makest waste in negarding. Yeah, you're beautiful now. You're now the world's fresh ornament, and only spring is more beautiful than you are. You're basically keeping your beauty to yourself, and which is really stupid. So pity the world, or else this glutton be, to eat the world's due by the grave in thee. So do the world a solid, and quit being so selfish and have kids. Leave your beauty for the world to enjoy. Let me add, as I was reading this, I was reminded of it. The language in this one is pretty complex. The ones that I put on the 6 sonnets to select, or whatever sonnets to select, the language is not as esoteric as this one. So yeah, if when I was reading that you're like, I hate Shakespeare, I get it. Yeah, the language in this one is a bit overly complex. So the situation that I created was, I'm talking to my brother. And just, this is all you would need to sort of write up for this. Just any thoughts you have are fine. We love each other, even though I find him selfish and annoying frequently. He is 3 years younger than me, and he was always the baby, so I kind of resent him a little bit, even though I do want the best for him. So what do I want? What's my goal? I want him to stop being so vain and to find someone to love and have children with. That's my goal. Pure and simple, straightforward. The obstacle, he thinks his looks, he thinks his only value is his looks, and he can be very self-absorbed. So, I mean, you could even go further with that. Why? Does, he was, maybe he just got out of a bad relationship, and he feels like no one will love him except for him being beautiful. Get as very specific as you want. Number 4, have I gotten off? What was number 3? Number 3 was the obstacle. Number 4, yeah, why is it important? He's getting older, and his looks are starting to fade. If he doesn't find someone now, he will end up like our father, who died miserable and lonely because he was so selfish. And then it will be my responsibility to take care of him. And as I think about this, all of this information is basically slippery, and it doesn't matter how you categorize it. This isn't all about creating a beautiful spreadsheet and putting things in the right slot. But maybe my goal really is to to not have to take care of him. But I think it's better expressed here because that just raises the importance of the goal. I want him to have kids. That is what I want him to do. Why? Because I don't want to have to take care of him. So why is this important? It's very common that someone might create an important situation that's important for someone else. You know, this is important to him so that he doesn't die alone. The stakes have to be for you. What do you get out of this? Why is it important for you? Super objective, expressed in a, I want to blank blank. I want to save my brother from dying alone. My action is to save him. That's what I'm doing for this whole sonnet. If the subtext sentence, elevator phrase is the same thing as a subtext sentence. I can't type. Is stop being so selfish. Could be have kids. But for me, it just works better emotionally with the way I connect to this sonnet if the point, what is the point? It needs to be quick, down and dirty and easy. Stop being so selfish. A really good elevator phrase is probably a command of some way, which is great. Because ultimately, every subtext of every actor's line is always, I'm right and you're wrong and you need to change your behavior. So stop being selfish. So then for each one of the sections of the sonnet, you'll come up with one verb and one elevator phrase. I've typed them here. You are not going to be turning in this. This is simply what a rehearsal script should look like. So you should create this for yourself to work with. But the assignment that you turn in is only going to have 3 sources with a couple bits of information about each, and then answers to these 8 questions. Questions number 7 and 8 I have written beside the sonnet. It'll be easier for you to see them that way. So this is what I suggest you create for a rehearsal script. When you memorize your lines, you need to be memorizing your verbs and your elevator phrases too. You need to associate from fairest creatures we desire to increase, blah, 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 for the rest of this quatrain. You need to associate that with teach. And when you learn those lines, you need to learn the action that you're doing with them and the thought that is behind them. The action is teach. The thought is you won't live forever. Just a quick review or a quick introduction. Sonnets are divided into 14 lines. I forgot that for a minute. 4 lines, and they're all divided up like this. 3 sections of 4 lines and 1 section of 2 lines. The 4 lines is called a quatrain. And the last 2 lines is called a couplet. Every single Shakespearean sonnet is structured this way. They all rhyme the same way. So I strongly suggest you look up how sonnets are structured. It will give you a lot of insights as an actor. Shakespeare is awesome because he gives everything that an actor needs in the structure of his language. This is not a class in Shakespeare, so we're not going to take the time to analyze the sonnets, but do yourself a favor and look up what iambic pentameter is, blank verse. It'll help you act the sonnet. So, what I've said here, from fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die, but as the riper should by time decease, his tender air might bear his memory. What's the point of that? And this could be different for every single situation. There is not one elevator phrase that goes with a quatrain. It's all going to depend on your given circumstances. The point that I'm making here is you won't live forever. So the subtext of when I say all this flowery Shakespearean language, the subtext of what I'm saying is you won't live forever. You could, in a different situation, the subtext could be you are so beautiful, The subtext could be another elevator phrase, could be oh, I don't know, from fierce creatures, subtext could be, death is natural. You know, that's one that I think is a bit clunky. The elevator phrase should be language that you use every day. Let me be very clear with the Shakespearean sonnet. An elevator phrase is not Shakespeare's words. You will not find the elevator phrase somewhere within Shakespeare's language. It is very contemporary. It's very straightforward. I hate you is a great elevator phrase. Leave me alone is a great elevator phrase. So think about phrases that are short, direct, sort of punch in the guts, smack on the face. Could be a smack or a kiss. So what am I doing with this first quatrain? I'm trying to teach him. I'm trying to teach my brother that he won't live forever in order to get him to stop being so vain and find someone to have children with. See how that works? You're doing something in order to get what you want. And what you're doing is overcoming your obstacle. I'm trying to teach my brother that I want him to stop being so selfish, and I'm teaching my brother that he won't live forever in order to stop him from being so vain, and I have to do this because he only values his looks and he is very self-absorbed. So the next one, I'm accusing him. So I'm saying, thou contracted to thine own bright eyes, feedest thy light flame with self-substantial fuel, making a famine where abundance lies, thyself thou voted thy sweet self too cruel. What's the point? You are so selfish. See how that works really well together. You are so selfish. That is so much an accusation. So I'm accusing him here of being selfish. And why am I doing that? Because I want him to have kids, and I'm trying to overcome the obstacle of him being a self-centered jerk. Thou that art now the world's fresh ornament, blah, blah, blah. You can see the words there. The point of these words is don't be stupid. You could say whatever you want here. Just as long as it's straight and forward, and I'm convincing him to not be stupid in order to achieve my goal. And the last one is, please have kids, and I'm urging him. So those are, for each section of your sonnet, you have a verb and you have a point. It's possible that your elevator phrase for this entire sonnet is one of the elevator phrases that you found within your, with one of the four. Could be, and that's fine, especially to start with. So think about the progress of your verbs. I go from teach to accuse to convince to urge. That's a nice progression. It would be weird if I went from teach to something else like attack, convince, and urge, to have to get to attack and then get right back off of it. You don't have very long to play each one of these verbs. So think about the shape of them. Think about how one verb flows into the next one. Think about that. Think about your elevator phrases. Basically, you could perform the point of this entire sonnet and just say four phrases. You won't live forever. You are so selfish. Don't be stupid. Please have kids. That's the point of what I'm saying. Think about your couplet. The couplet is always, I think it's the most important part of the sonnet. There's always a turn there. You're always going to find something new. So what happens generally in a sonnet is you lay out an idea, you present, hey, here's a thought, you develop that thought, and then there's some sort of resolution. The resolution is almost always in the couplet. So that's great for an actor. It gives you something new to do. It gives you somewhere else to go. So really take advantage of that. Think about your last verb. Verbs like urge, beg, condemn. Think about very strong verbs to help you end your sonnet. So I am presenting this for you to look at and before class. I know you will have a lot of questions. That's great. Let's talk about this and let's figure out how the heck to do this. Again, please don't freak out about this. This is something that you have never done before. You probably have no clue. Jump right in there. Don't be afraid to fail. And let's talk about it in class. See ya.